Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about Elden Ring, so let's get into it. So this is probably a bit of an unpopular opinion here, but I wasn't crazy about Elden Ring. I have a lot of problems with this game which I'll go through, but first I think it's best to talk about my history with FromSoftware's games. I have played a number of their games and I mostly love them. I played both Dark Souls 2 and 3. I did not like 2 at all. I thought it was very boring and glitchy. Dark Souls 3, however, was my introduction to FromSoft's games and I struggled to get through it a lot, but I eventually learnt the gameplay loop and I got through it and I loved it. I'd never felt such a sense of achievement from finishing a game before, but the game gave that to me and I always look back on it fondly. I then played Bloodborne, which, another unpopular opinion, I could not get into that game either. I've tried it a few times, but the game just doesn't click with me. I like the art direction and the aggressive combat, but it was just so easy for me to get lost in the game, and I found that very frustrating. I played Sekiro when that came out, and once again, I felt another sense of accomplishment finishing that game. That one feels the most fairest in terms of difficulty out of all of these games because if you win or lose, it purely comes from your skill and ability to read attacks, and I love that about it.
Tough but fair.
Elden Ring is being titled FromSoft's most accessible game, and I just could not disagree more with that sentiment. About a year ago, I played the Demon Souls remake from Bluepoint, which is still a FromSoft game, and I think by far, if you're looking for an entry point into these types of games, that's the one to start with. And it might be my favorite Souls game. I love how structured it is, the bosses are great, and there are a lot of build options that are easily flexible. A lot of people have said that this is basically the ultimate Souls game, and I can understand why. The amount of options there are for your build are insane. But this actually leads to one of my many problems with this game. While there is a lot, you need to know what you want to do from the jump, because if you're not liking your build or your weapons halfway through, you're in for a world of grinding.
I'm grinding! I'm grinding!
There is something there to restructure your stats, but you'll need a good weapon to match that, and it takes a long time to level up a weapon. So to just stop with a weapon that you've been working on for ages just to start on a new one is very annoying. I ended up just sticking with the one basic weapon the entire time. I made it as powerful as possible, but when you get to those endgame bosses, it's not really enough. The only thing I can suggest if you haven't gotten far is to not spend too much time with the one weapon and get attached to it. Until you find one legendary weapon, then get attached to that one and go from there. Even that's easier said than done though, because the game feels like it wants you to make a decision quick, because even the early bosses will annihilate you with a weak weapon.
Come on!
My favorite part about this game might just be the art direction. The lands between look fantastic, and while this might not be the greatest game in terms of its graphical fidelity, the art direction makes this look stunning. Having the Erdtree be in the background wherever you are is an excellent design choice, as that is where you have to eventually be to finish the game. The enemies have such variation as well, each thing looks more creepy than the next, and the bosses look fantastic. Many of the major bosses as well have a very unique setting. Renala's boss, for example, might be the most stunning in the whole game because of how unique it is. The elephant in the room with all of these games is the difficulty. There is always a debate on whether they should have difficulty options. I don't really know about that. The best thing about the majority of these games is overcoming that challenge, and I think FromSoft have done an excellent job of making the difficulty feel mostly fair with a steep learning curve. However, with Elden Ring, I felt like a lot of ways I died felt very cheap and very artificial. Sure, there are some bosses that are scaled well, but a lot of the endgame bosses especially felt way too fast and had too many AoE attacks that didn't give you anywhere near enough time to get out of the way. Whenever you healed, it felt like the bosses were programmed to hit you with a ranged attack to stop this, even if you are well out of the way. And the special attacks you have that do meaningful damage are usually too slow, where you could just perfectly dodge an attack and hit the button straight away and they will do a quick attack to interrupt it. It just felt extremely frustrating and I just got sick of it. I basically finished the game because I had just made it so far, but by the time I made it to the fire giant boss, I was basically done with this game.
This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Then there is the damage output, which is quite ridiculous. In most of these games, the bosses will have attacks that take a large chunk of your health, and they will have a special attack, which will take most of your health bar. In Elden Ring, so many attacks just one-shot you, or you'll be caught in a combo where you're just stun-locked and the boss just minces your health bar. This happens so much, and I was so sick of being stuck on these endgame bosses that I just used the multiplayer function to have someone help me out. When I fought the final boss, I eventually summoned a guy who was clearly hacking the game or something because he was taking this boss's most powerful attacks and his health bar just wouldn't go down at all. This is not how I initially wanted to finish this game, but by the time I reached this point, I was just so done with it. When I finished Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, and the Demon Souls remake, I felt like I was learning the attack patterns. I would eventually get to the point where I could confidently avoid most of the attacks and get through the boss. I just never felt that here. Then we have the summons, which were basically called the easy mode for this game, and I can't understand why. They work well in the beginning, especially when dealing with large groups of enemies, but once again, when you get to those endgame bosses, they are essentially useless. I worked through the game to get apparently the strongest summon, which is basically a clone of yourself, and it was considered really powerful. But by the time I got it, the patch had kicked in to basically nerf anything that could make this extremely brutal game a little less difficult. But nope, now my summon basically just runs into the boss's attacks and dies in 30 seconds. Now, going back to some positive stuff, the open world in Elden Ring is pretty great. It is a little different compared to a Ubisoft style of open world where you have a billion quests at once. There are quests in Elden Ring, but they feel similar to Dark Souls ones where you kind of naturally progress if you're willing to explore the world and go to different areas. One thing that has been upgraded quite substantially is the exploration. Adding such basic things like a horse and a jumping mechanic adds so much to these games, and they open up new ways of discovering this open world. The game also does a pretty great job of rewarding you for this exploration. Usually you will find a tomb, mine, or bell tower that give you necessary items if you want to upgrade your weapons or summons. I will say some of them feel a little recycled throughout the game, but they also added a new element to the gameplay where it's a more confined environment which creates a tense experience.
Spooky.
The map is also huge. On the normal surface level, it's about the same size as most open worlds, but what makes this a lot bigger is the whole underground section, which could stand as an expansion to most games as it feels completely different to the rest of this game. That was a great touch of giving you more options to level up and discover new areas. There were some expectations from people that this would have a compelling story attached, seeing as Game of Thrones writer George R.R. Martin has been involved with this game. If you come into this game expecting that, you will be wildly disappointed. This presents its story like a lot of the Souls games by feeding it to you via lore. There are a couple of cutscenes that do give you a little more story compared to other Souls games, but it's still nowhere near enough to say it's anywhere close to compelling. I personally wasn't expecting anything different. The art direction and gameplay is usually what gets me invested in these games in the first place, so this didn't feel any different in that regard. But if you are someone who hasn't purchased this game and are hoping for a story, let me just stop you now because there really isn't any. Multiplayer is the last thing I'm going to talk about when it comes to this game, as it is a very mixed bag. I felt like the people who I summoned were either way too strong and I could just watch them beat the boss without me doing anything, or they would just get demolished in 30 seconds. I never really found a happy middle where we were both contributing to beating the boss. Also, for such a popular game, the wait times to summon someone were a joke. There were times I was waiting up to half an hour just for the option to summon someone came up, and most of the time it was someone who would get defeated really quickly, which just added to the frustration of the whole experience.
I'm very angry with you.
Jeez, what's your problem?
Overall, Elden Ring has some things that really work and make me fully realize why so many people love this so much and it has so much critical praise. But personally, I could not enjoy this as much as other games made by FromSoft. I felt like the developers went out of their way to make this game as frustrating as possible, and the fact they used their time to nerf certain weapons and summons that help you with this game just annoyed me even further when things like multiplayer and certain bosses' attacks felt like they needed more work. I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10 because after finishing this game, I really don't have any desire to go through this experience again, and I'm now a little hesitant about the next From Software game now. Thank you for watching the video. Let me know what you think about Elden Ring down below, and remember to like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.